Star Trek, The Nerdy Frontier. These are the discussions of the Good Times Society. Their continuing mission to explore each episode, to seek out new topics and ridiculous observations, to boldly watch what they've already watched before. Becca, if you were to meet a society that was Atlantis-like in terms of their mythological origins and their ability to have access to unfathomable technology that just makes their lives better, what gift of theirs would be required for you to not take Oshi back after they kidnapped him?
Well, Jake, I'm glad you asked. I would assume that such a society would act as if they've been living under a rock. And they would be idiots if they didn't realize that they would have to pry Oshi from my cold, dead fingers. Whether or not I'm the favorite parent, they would immediately die for even thinking of touching one of his little baby hairs.
Oshi is Becca's dog,
Xander?
just to clarify context there, in case that
Why
was
would anyone be
confusing.
listening to this podcast and not know my dog?
I kind of wanted the listener to have to figure out if it was a child or a dog or like a prized pillow
Some
or
sort
something.
of, yeah.
Oh, yeah, it's my, like, person-sized pillow. What do you call those? Those body pillows that people fall in love with?
Yeah, dakimaguro, I think.
Dakimadro.
Dakimaguro
Y'all, Xander
means
speaks Japanese.
Hugging pillow.
There's a word. Anyway, this seems relevant to episode 116, When the Bow Breaks.
Yes.
Thanks, Becca. Yeah. In this episode, Wesley Crusher must protect a group of kidnapped children while Captain Picard fights for their release. And, you know, by fights for his release, after reading that synopsis, he kind of just waits.
And by protects the other children, you mean plays with the big computer for a bit.
And instigates a hunger strike.
Yeah. Well, it worked, and I thought it was genius. Xander, what would you do if you were in this situation, this hypothetical?
Oh my gosh, I'm glad that you asked me, because this is the sort of problem that I love that they explore in Star Trek. You know, this sort of conundrum of, like, you can kind of see both sides of the issue. My solution would have been, let's get some volunteers to get down there and help them out. Not just donate the kids, but the parents too. And, like,
Yeah, the
let's
reproductive.
colonize.
Right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. Like, how about you just get some horny adventurers on the ship?
I'm sure there are a ton. On the Enterprise alone, Riker is probably already signed up.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, we need to impregnate?
Yeah, Riker's so on board.
I'm sure there are plenty of kids who also don't want to live with their parents anymore.
So this is, like, the actual core meat of the episode I thought was really great. And I don't know if it's just the time that we're living in or if it's me specifically, but I actually, like, teared up multiple times in this cheesy, like, episode.
Oh my God. I cried a lot.
Right?
Something about being taken away from your parents and the vulnerability of children just makes me it's fun.
Yeah. Not just that, but also this weird sort of wish fulfillment, especially as, like, a queer kid growing up. Everybody sort of has this, I don't belong in my family. I'm the artist, or I'm the math one, or I'm
too
the
cool
cook.
and I'm the only one without glasses.
Exactly. And so everyone goes through that developmental stage. If I
love
had
you, Lisa.
parents that understood, then my life would be perfect, and we could just explore music together. I could have a mentor built into my house, you know. But then they realize it's not about that, and, you know, I think it was a beautiful message for kids who might be watching this growing up thinking that, you know, and it makes you appreciate sort of the environment that you grow up even more.
Because you might get irradiated if you left.
Right.
Is that what you meant?
No.
That is beautiful when you put it that way.
Yeah. The general metaphorical sense, but, you know, also the radiation.
Oh, got it. I thought it was to scare children by telling them that if they do run away from their parents, even if their parents don't understand them, that they will be killed with radiation in a matter of decades.
I was kind of hoping for at least an arc of something like that where we saw a rougher relationship. We kind of got a little bit of it with Harry.
Yeah.
Harry, thank you. That's the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Dr.
Yeah.
Bernard, but Harry just didn't want to do calculus. I wanted just a little bit more.
Everyone needs a base understanding of calculus.
This 8-year-old is learning calculus. That's incredible. Why
He's a
aren't we
Starfleet kid.
there? I feel like children could get there today on planet Earth. We should just try teaching kids calculus. Like, I think is the moral I took away from this episode.
Yeah.
I'd like to issue a challenge then, Becca. Maybe you should learn
Go
a little
ahead.
calculus and...
Or no, just go ahead and teach it.
Well, guess what? I grew up on Aldea, so I don't have any kids.
Well, I also like that Dad didn't even really respond to the question of why, which is a pretty good question of why do I need a foundation in calculus, especially if I'm going to be a sculptor.
So you can be an engineer like Wesley.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah.
your technology doesn't surpass your individual ability to comprehend said technology, so you don't notice when it needs maintenance because it's killing you.
See, Becca, you'd be a great parent, whereas Dr. Bernard just yelled at his kid more.
Thank
Right.
you.
But
Thank
also,
you. Don't
like-
make me cry. This whole episode made me cry.
Who knows what Dr. Bernard is dealing with, though, because you might have a sort of Hulk situation, because that kid messed up Commander Riker. Like, he just bumped into him, and he came in with a limp to the bridge, so much so that Deanna Troi is like, bro, you're limping. And he's like, yeah, this kid, like, tackled me in the hallway, and now, like, I may be a commanding officer on a starship, and, like, we have rigorous physical training, but, ow.
Riker might be big, but he has brittle bones.
Yeah.
It's that thing you get hit right in the elbow, right in the funny bone, right in the knee.
Yeah.
He forgot his injury as soon as he heard about Aldea, though. Man, he got
Right.
real enthusiastic.
Because he
got
thought it might
horny
be
on
a
Maine.
bone fest. Yeah, always horny on Maine. Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah.
Put it in the pants, Riker, and keep it there.
He wanted to bang that planet. I mean, right?
He wanted to
Yeah.
bang the whole planet just for being mysterious. And I like that they trapped the exposition of what this planet is about and how Aldea is this sort of like Atlantis type planet.
Yeah.
But Yar has never heard of it, which is like, Yar, didn't you go to Starfleet Academy? I know you grew up on running from rape gangs, but
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, the thing is too is that why did they give this plot point to Riker when Picard has been established as like an archaeologist or a fan of these kinds of things? He gets perfectly excited, but I don't know. It was a weird sort of like shift that they gave. I guess Picard had the kid thing.
I try to remember that when someone in Starfleet like asks a question, you think like you should know that. They're always doing it into service of like, well, we want to do an exposition dump, right?
It's the same thing that we do in like role-playing games, like playing NPCs. You're prompting to either get in this backstory or exposition. It doesn't really matter what the question is. You just want some sort of explanation that's not just espousing or coming from data.
Yeah, exactly.
it was a little kind of smooth. And Troy is finally using her power. She's the one that discovers thousands of minds. You would think that a betazoid or a half betazoid had traveled through this quadrant of star space before and would have sensed this missing planet, especially if we knew it was around where this Atlantis Aldea
These people
existed.
are crazy powerful though. Like
Yeah.
they
That's-
punched
yeah.
the Enterprise 3 days away.
I'm gonna give you a 3-day punch.
Yeah. You're asking the Trek questions because I had my notes the same thing. I was saying like Deanna Troi is not only a full betazoid, but you're telling me an entire race of beings that are traveling around space never bumped into one of these.
Or maybe the
But-
betazoids just kept their secret.
Maybe, but Jake brings up a good point. Is later on they reveal that they were sending out these breadcrumbs on purpose. So that's the argument of maybe they were shielding from betazoids up until then. So they were just trying to attract the Enterprise specifically.
Get them babies. Put out their
Get them
baby
babies.
tracker. Just like
Yeah.
I've been doing since I turned 25.
Yeah, and bring
Anyway.
them to Burning Man, the planet. Where they're like, we just want to do art and no responsibility, and they're like, it's uninhabitable otherwise.
Speaking of planet, it was interesting. This is a limitation of production budget, but this is an entire planet, and I kept writing notes like, oh wow, everyone on the ship. Wait, no, it's not a ship. This is a single building
Right.
where everyone that lives on this planet lives.
Yeah.
If they had infinite budget, I imagine they would have done some sort of public service announcement or a big stage where it's like, we have stolen the children and are negotiating a price
Right.
to an entire world of people.
This is the main, from me, one of the main complaints that I have of the Star Trek format of storytelling is that planets are reduced to just one city. You go to Vulcan and you know what it's going to look like, even though Earth itself is such a diversity of landscapes. I know what a scene on Vulcan will look like, or in Kronos with the Klingons. You know what I mean? Like there's this, but you're limited, like you said, with the budget. So for this one, I had forgotten that the pallid skin was a part of the like symptoms, and I was like, this makeup job is terrible. What is happening? Like, someone dust off this powder. What's going on? Oh, it's a part of it. Okay, never mind.
I didn't even notice. I'm used to wearing so much powder anyway.
The high definition version of this show, like you see the makeup a lot in general. So and it was supposed to be obvious, or not obvious. It's supposed to be, I guess, subtle in this one.
Right. Plus, it was broadcast in a fuzzier resolution, so I'm sure they needed it to be like that to register.
Yeah.
So we meet Radu and Rochella that beam themselves aboard to the bridge, and that's when Crusher is like, oh my god, they didn't go through the decontamination because they didn't use our transport system, and this, see, I'm thinking like a Trekkie, and this is also them giving us this information that every time someone comes through the regular transport system, they become decontaminated.
Yes, that is important. That becomes the main point for multiple episodes.
But like for Ranky have transported into the bridge before, and we didn't notice or make it a thing before. But they were contaminated.
Right. So that was a hostile situation. Same thing with Q, who just like would appear. That's why it's so disturbing when stuff like that happens, because there's a protocol. There's these safety measures that are put in place, and when they're circumvented, that's when like things can go off the rails, and who knows? Suddenly we're somewhere else.
Wild.
I felt like everybody was pretty immediately okay, though. Like, as soon as it was established that we could turn off the alarm, they're like, okay, I'll take that cornucopia.
Well, Picard was really on board, and I think that kind of set the tone.
Yeah.
And I was like, Picard is surprisingly on board right away.
Well, they also then, without really kind of asking, they pull Riker, Crusher, and Troy just off the ship, and like Picard's reaction is interesting
choices. Yeah.
Why wouldn't he be
Not
furious? That he didn't ask permission. He said, "Oh, we'll bring some other people along, and you, first officer." How do they know the protocol is that the first officer is the one that goes on the trip? And then like what? I mean, it's great that the captain is keeping his chill, but I wouldn't. Like, you didn't have permission to teleport my people.
Right. I think that we've got one aspect with Crusher acting like a professionally paranoid, not even paranoid, but correct person and Starfleet officer, and then this flimsy excuse of Picard is so excited about discovering Atlantis-like things that he's like, ooh, let's let this happen, thinking that they are inferior in some way, even though they've proven multiple times that they are superior technologically.
Or are they? We'll find out later.
Are they?
But something weird when they first teleport into the bridge is that they're really bothered by, we find out, the bright lights. They keep squinting and covering their faces.
Right.
A telltale sign of radiation poisoning.
Do we ever actually like see or hear what exactly they are capable of in terms of their technology? Like, they only, I mean, obviously the shield, that's the big thing, and the punch, but like, what about it? What makes their life so easy?
Transport that goes real quick.
Transport at warp too, I think, was happening.
Let me be more specific. What I'm saying is, like, what gives them the ability to just relax and do art all day? Like, they also said they were going to share a bunch of secrets.
A big tower of glowy.
Yeah, this is the future that liberals want. Just some computer telling you your schedule, but I'll use Sculpt all day, whatever.
Exactly.
It is, though.
Can't wait.
Yeah. No, I think that's the thing, is that they were trying to establish that this culture is so far removed from doing things themselves or having the agency to question how things work that the solutions that they jump to are equally outrageous. Of like, well, we need kids. There are some kids. Let's go get those kids. Like, they belong to us.
Yeah, it's wild, and it's also so relatable because we are there. There's so many things that we use every day and we don't understand. Pistons in a car. I don't even know what a piston is. Fires or something. But I use it every day, or used to.
The internet, a series of tubes. I have no idea how this works.
Yeah, I don't know. You plug it in and make it go, or call the ATT guy when it doesn't work and yell at him. But it's an interesting parallel that we know so much less the more we progress.
This is the future liberals want.
Right. And we've encountered this before on this perspective on a prime directive, because now we've seen us.
Would you call that a directive perspective?
It would be a director perspective, where we've seen the level of where we're above others technologically, we've been below others, but now it's this weird middle ground of like technologically they're kind of above, but they don't really have the mental maturity to handle what's really happening with their technology. So it's another sort of perspective on this Prime Directive.
And we never really get to, by the end of the show, what created, what gave them this power. They got there and then they started to regress, perhaps, so it's a warning, or some outside force gifted them this, what do they call their supercomputer? They have some crazy name.
The custodian.
Custodian.
Yeah, with the progenitors. That's who they said created everything.
Progenitors.
But I do have a theory that it was aliens.
Oh. I thought they just mispronounced progenitors.
Yeah, progenitors.
Custodians, progenitors. It makes sense. There's also, we've talked about it, but just to explicitly call it out, that there is this recurring theme in literature of, I'm thinking Children of Men, Handmaid's Tale, the fear of infertility. That's such a big collective fear. And why?
I think it's because once you remove the species of humanity from Earth, what is there to fear? The fear now is we're going to run out. Now that humans are spreading out and populating all over the place, we're terraforming, we're going, but the fight or flight response has now turned species wide, and so an inability to procreate, I think becomes a fear of progenitorate. Becomes a general fear, and like you said, this planet seemed pretty empty, and these might be the only ones that are left. So if that's ramped up to that level, then and they don't know any better because they're in this sort of bubble of creativity prison. Then, it's no wonder they resorted to that.
You're defending them? You monster.
Yes. This is what UBI will do. None of you will be able to do anything except sculpt with an electronic sculpting device.
Sign me up.
Well, also, I think we already have invited that when we replaced pagan rituals with Christian ones. I mean, it was all about fertility rituals back in the day. So it's already too late for humanity.
It's a concern in the zeitgeist.
May Day is about fertility celebrations, and we ruined it.
The way they treat children makes them monstrous parents, though, because like when they're negotiating with it's either Picard or with Riker and Crusher and Troy, they say something about why do you want them back so badly? You can always make more. It's like they're people. We have relationships with these.
I think one misstep that they should have done was they made them look too human, and they were supposed to be an alien species.
Yes.
I think it was to make it more relatable. And actually, one of my theories is to not freak out the kid actors, because there are the rules. You don't work with kids and you don't work with animals. And I can imagine having a lot of prosthetic makeup on all of these extras, or rather the player characters, would kind of freak them out and make it hard to concentrate on sit still and look scared. You know what I mean? So I think they had to strike a balance between that.
I just want more sympathy for these people a little bit. Like, we don't gain it until we find out at the end they've been poisoning themselves and they just want to continue their society. But, like, they start off with the kidnapping, so none of us are ever really going to get back on their side. Right?
They wanted us to examine the human condition of caring for your offspring, which is not just in humans, but they're like, wow, it's so fascinating. It's so strong in humans. So it was sort of bungled, like that exploration of it, because there could have been a cool lesson there or some way to explore that, but I think it was just kind of mishandled.
Let me jump back to a little summarizing, just for people that haven't seen it in a long time. So Rochella is the youngest person on this planet, and she's like 30. And so they steal like 10 kids, including Wesley, of all varying ages. Wesley's the oldest by far. And there's this little redhead named Alexandria. And Rochella, the oldest on their planet, picks her out, and they like become besties. And I wrote redheads be crazy, this tiny one's making alliances, because immediately she walks over and like puts her hand out with her little stuffed animal plushy thing in her hand. And Rochella,
who was really in control in that situation?
Well,
Alexandra was in control the whole time.
Oh yeah, she's totally knows what she's up to, especially when she comes for Picard. But there is this thing that they show that their alien race can form these bonds, even though they don't seem to understand them them for the people of the Enterprise, because Rochella, they're going to give Alexandria, the little girl, to her like foster family, and Rochelle's like, this one's mine. I love her. You will pry her out of my cold dead hands, just like me and Oshi. So it is an interesting thing that they're like, oh, okay, so they can't understand this concept of identifying with the children as their own.
But as their own possession, like, she knew that kid was going to go to a unit, and she still said, no, I'm keeping this for myself.
Right. Because I have a bond
the opposite.
with it.
Well, yeah, but
that's how I feel about
still
Oshi.
Treating it less... But you're still not really treating it as an individual, right? Like, if it's been...
Well, we're calling these children
I know we are, because I'm just trying to...
Yeah.
They. But the point is, like, that's still, I think, a little bit demeaning, right?
Yeah, well, I think... do either of you have, like, nieces or nephews?
Yes.
So I have a nephew, and this gave me like nephew energy, where you show up, you're the new thing, you probably brought a present of some time, or any time that you show up you bring a present, and they're like instantly attached. And then your sibling is like, oh, we're gonna go off, you can babysit, and it's a disaster at some point in the evening of like, they just want a parent back even though you were the fun uncle and now you're not anymore. So I felt that sort of bond was occurring naturally. And you had mentioned that this was sort of the youngest person on the planet, so they're so far removed from dealing with children and dealing with that sort of mentality of these mood swings, that it's sort of a grandparent mentality versus an uncle or an aunt or even a parent mentality and bond with these younger kids. That's how I saw it anyway.
Yeah.
So walk us through plot, what's happening back on the Enterprise.
Well, what I was so confused about is, like, Picard says he's stalling, but, like, they simply aren't returning his calls, so he's not in control. Also, they were supposed to be offering something for the kids, and I don't ever recall there being an offer made. Was there?
The knowledge.
The offer was...
But they didn't say what it was. They're just like, here, let us show you.
Yeah. They don't know. They're like, look at our janitor, our giant janitor. See? You're welcome. Give us your children. Well, we don't know how it works.
Eventually, they pull some shenanigans. Picard's able to get himself and Crusher beamed over onto the planet. Crusher sneaks a little bit of a diagnostic with Wesley on his foster mom, and that's how they figure out that these people are irradiated, right?
Real subtle. He puts his arm over her, but with a scanning device in his hand, and doesn't touch her. So it's like, what do you do?
I like to think that her dimming vision from the radiation poisoning just makes her not quite as perceptive.
Right. That makes sense.
She's also not used to these, like, human hover hand customs.
Yep. Yeah, maybe they just think it's a custom thing. Also, I thought, maybe the people on this planet forgot so much stuff. They forgot what sex is, and they don't know all they got to do is get it on in order to procreate.
Babies are growing in her belly. I don't know what's not going on.
Totally valid, especially once they demonstrate they don't have a basic understanding of really anything.
Right? How does this work? What's behind that door? We don't know.
Let's make some music.
Also, in terms of making music, like, what was the girl's name? Katie, who was the musician?
They're all just their occupations to me. That's how they're named.
Music Child.
Okay, Music Child.
Music Child.
Who finds Music Old Man for their pairing.
She was being instructed to not think so much as feel, and when she just did a chord that was really actually pretty dark and like almost John Carpenter-y, that was regarded as a failure. It's like, oh no, I need some major chord progressions here for this to be successful.
Right. Yeah, less Eric Whitacre, more
Maybe
John
she's
Williams.
the Trent Reznor of the Starship. Who knows, right?
Well, that's what she turns into, because what happens in that scene, she plays a little ditty that sounds just like the opening credits of the show.
Weird.
And her
so
new
maybe
daddy...
she's been playing it this whole time.
Tied it in. I love that. Her new daddy's like, okay, cool, that was good. Now play something less sad. And she goes, that's how I'm feeling right now.
Yeah.
It's the saddest line of the episode.
Calm down, Johnny Cash. You're like 6.
Yeah. Well,
your life isn't that bad.
It's important that they show us that these kids were enjoying that thing you were talking about before of, okay, Aunt Becca, it's fun with you, but you're not my mommy.
Right. Or I'm finally in this environment where what I wanted to do is flourishing, and I have an adult that understands, but I don't want to do this all the time. I want something else, you know?
And around this time is when we get a lesson in acting from the School of Patrick Stewart, Acting 101. Always pause before the word forever. Because he goes, they'll keep us out and the children in forever.
Forever.
Yeah, no.
Just
you
to
really
establish.
it really sells us on the severity of the situation when you pause there.
Listen, when you want to punch something, there has to be a space before and after.
Mm-hmm.
Boom.
I'm not sure what the definition is of passive resistance, but is a hunger strike considered passive or active?
Passive.
Because you're not
Passive.
doing something? Is that
That's
it?
Because you're not harming something else.
Okay, you're just harming yourself?
Right.
Okay.
Like a hunger strike or yeah. Well,
Got it.
exactly. That's what
So
it
that is passive resistance.
I immediately
sit
got
in.
hungry when you said the word hunger. I would not have had the
All right,
patience
calm
of
down,
Alexandria.
Alexandra.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's like, I don't care. Give me this kumquat or
Right.
whatever the fuck.
Yeah, they
that you got from
bring
craft
a
services.
tray of fruit to the children as Wesley has collected all the children and has advised them all that if they want to see their parents again, then they all have to be on a sit-in. And what is it? Little Harry is like, yeah, but
Sculpture
like
child.
I found out I'm real good at sculpting here, so
Yeah.
maybe I stay. And he's like, all or nothing, kid. The kid's
Right.
like, I guess I'll go back to my mean dad that makes me do calculus.
He finally got someone who's going to nurture his talents instead of yelling at him about it.
He didn't even know he had talents. He'd never done art before.
Well, his talent is just running a laser over it, which seems to just kind of make the sculpture.
I love that he asks that question.
Yeah.
Though. Like they're like, "You made this," and like, he's like, "Did I?" And that's a basic question of art. What is it the tool or is it the artist or is it
Especially
the
with
artist
sculpting,
controlling the
because
tool?
sculpting's this weird thing where you're removing something that's already
You're
there,
letting
right?
out the art.
Yeah.
You're the facilitator.
Negative space.
Yeah.
The other thing that was very interesting detail-wise about this episode was the fact that for the plan to come into effect where Riker and Data were going to beam down because they discovered that the hole's not so much a hole as it is a fluctuation or something like that?
That's
In
right.
A fluctuation. Yeah. In the.
So the timing had to be precise. And then here was the timing.
Yeah, Worf.
But yeah, Picard and Crusher get beamed over, and then Worf looks, turns, calls out, transporter room, pause, now.
Now.
The least precise method they could have chosen.
Right?
Listen, if you want to punch, you have to pause before and
And
after.
There you go. It makes sense. I get it when you put it that way.
Patrick Stewart pulled him up aside for that one.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting it was Worf and not Yar because isn't this a head of security move?
So I have a theory
Being
about
usurped again.
I just have a theory about like how they distribute lines in the early season of the show, because I'm figuring occasionally, like the Riker example that we talked about earlier, which was about him having a passion about this. I think they're just trying to disperse a little bit of the character work and like get everybody some equal screen time so they can develop more freely later on. I'm wondering if that's why. Like Worf is actually now more present than he kind of has been throughout much of the first season. He's always kind of been more background. And now I know we'll get
That's
to
true.
it more too into the second season.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly it. Like Becca, now you're understanding sort of like the shifts and the chain of command and things like that they themselves have established. Now we kind of have to go along with they're going to break that just for screen time or whoever they made up the most for that batch of filming. You know
But
what
they
I mean?
will
If
get
it has-
better, and I think they get really good at it in the later seasons. It becomes
Yes.
they get assigned correctly in that way.
Right, because the audience starts paying attention, and they were like,
And writing
oh,
letters.
you care. Yeah, and writing letters.
Oh,
Exactly.
they care, all right. So pretty much the episode ends with Picard, explaining to them, listen, you have radiation poisoning, and we can reverse this.
Yeah.
We're going to take our kids back. And that's just what you have to choose now. So
Right.
we pretty much cure them, I believe, or at least set them up for being cured. And then as we're leaving, Troy says something that really kind of perplexed me, which is that she knows that they'll make good parents. Do you know that those people will make good parents? Because they
They
seem to be...
nurture innate skills.
Okay, is that all it takes? Because they
guess so.
treat kids like commodities.
Right.
Don't we all?
I think the assumption there is that they will not be terrible parents like maybe some humans are.
Hey, Troy looks for something nice to say, okay?
Yeah, silver lining.
Yeah. Also, unrelated, the girls wear jelly shoes.
You know what? I bet that kid showed up for set and threw a tantrum when they tried to take the jelly shoes off, and they're like, no, these are in the future now.
Yeah.
They're terrible for the Earth environment, but replicators don't care.
Replicators don't care. They can break down plastic. Unfortunately, our planet cannot.
Oh. Bummer.
On that note, what's next week?
Next week is pretty crazy. It's home soil. When the Enterprise visits an outpost in the process of terraforming a dead planet, they find the science team threatened by a mysterious new life form.
If you have not heard enough Technobabble yet, buckle up for this episode.
Well, I think we should end on a buckle up. That sounds good to me. Right? Let's
Buckle up.
Oh.
Engage. I thought I was purposely doing it wrong, but it turns out I was right.
perfect.